Listen, there is a specific time in life when you quit chasing people, stop explaining yourself, and stop making yourself small just to make another person feel comfortable. That moment is called self-respect. And when you finally step into it, when you clearly see your own value, you will notice something strong happen around you. Toxic individuals start to feel uneasy. They pull away. They speak behind your back. They try to make you feel guilty or make you doubt yourself. Not because you did something wrong, but because you finally did something right. Tonight, I want to explain why your growth scares the people who refuse to change, why your confidence threatens the people who survive on control, why your boundaries shake the very ground of toxic people. Let us talk about the truth they hope you never figure out. When you finally step into your own self-respect, something powerful and almost spiritual happens inside you. It is like the mist that once surrounded your mind suddenly clears up and you begin to see what was always right in front of you. But hidden behind confusion, guilt, and emotional noise, toxic people live in that mist. They rely on it. They do well when you doubt yourself, when you lower your worth, when you quiet your own instincts just to keep a peace that was never real in the first place. They want you questioning your choices, questioning your memory, questioning your gut feeling. Because the minute you stop questioning yourself, you start questioning them. And that is the moment their entire plan falls apart. You see, tricks do not work on a person who knows who they are. When you have self-respect, you do not fall for weak apologies, mixed signals, or selective kindness. You stop giving people points for trying when they keep doing the same hurtful actions over and over. And that scares toxic people. It scares them because their power never came from strength. It came from your uncertainty. It came from your fear of fighting, your fear of letting someone down, your fear of being alone. But the moment you learn to stand tall in your truth, they lose the ability to bend your reality. Think about the partner who twists reality. They do not fear losing your love. They fear losing the version of you who would rather swallow your pain than face their lies. They fear losing the version of you who doubted your own feelings, who apologized for reacting to their disrespect. Who convinced yourself you were thinking too much when deep down you knew you were right? That partner fears the day you wake up and trust your own mind again. Because when you do, their games have nowhere left to hide. Think about the friend who only appears when they need a favor, who vanishes the moment you need help. They do not fear losing the friendship. They fear losing their access. Access to your time, your energy, your given nature, your emotional worth. They fear losing the version of you who said, yes, even when you were tired, or put them first even when they would not do the same for you, who accepted tiny scraps because you valued the connection more than they valued your presence. When you start valuing yourself first, that access gets blocked and suddenly they act like you have changed. But you did not change. You just stopped letting yourself be used. I once heard a person share a story about how they were always saying sorry for things they never did wrong. They felt responsible for everyone's emotions, walking on eggshells just to keep the peace. They would say sorry even when they were the one hurting. One day, after years of repeating this pattern, they finally said, no, I did not cause this. This was not my fault. And the moment they said it, the other person's mask fell off. The reaction was not hurt. It was anger. Not because of the situation, but because for the first time the trick did not work. The control they once had vanished in one sentence. That is what self-respect does. It breaks the spell. Self-respect is just like switching on the lights in a room where someone has been concealing the truth from you. You start to see the patterns, the things that don't add up, the controlling methods that once felt like simple mistakes, but now look like planned behavior. You realize the silent treatments were not about cooling off. They were a punishment. You realize the backhanded compliments were not jokes. They were subtle ways of lowering your confidence. You realize the constant shifting of blame was not bad communication. It was a plan to keep you feeling small. And the moment you see it, you cannot unsee it. That clarity scares toxic people because it forces responsibility. It exposes the lies they told, the games they played, the weaknesses they projected onto you to avoid facing their own. It reveals the truth they have been trying to bury under guilt trips, emotional tricks, and half-truths. They hate being seen clearly, not because they want to be better, but because they want to keep doing what they are doing without any result. When you respect yourself, you stop letting people rewrite your reality. You stop letting them dismiss your experiences. You stop letting them rule your emotions. You learn to trust your gut, to speak up when something feels wrong, to walk away from situations that do not honor you. And that is the moment you become a threat, not because you hurt anyone, but because you stop giving them permission to hurt you. There is a saying, manipulation only succeeds when you are trying to please the person doing the tricking. Once you stop performing, the manipulation stops working. Once the manipulation stops working, the manipulator panics. They panic because their power was not power. It was a special right, a right they had in your life because you did not see your own, a right they abused because you did not know how to demand better, a right that vanishes the second you begin to love yourself enough to say no more. Self-respect is the ultimate disruptor. It does not shout. It does not scream. It does not fight for attention. It simply stands firm and refuses to be moved. When you finally see your own worth, something beautiful happens. The world does not change. You do. The people in your life do not change. You change the way you respond to them. The bad behavior does not disappear. You just become immune to it. And that immunity is what toxic people fear the most. They fear it because they cannot control a person who chooses themselves. They cannot trick a person who trusts their own voice. They cannot confuse a person who sees the truth clearly. Your self-respect removes the blindfold they relied on. It exposes everything they hoped you would not notice. And once you see it, the game is finished. Not because you played better, but because you stopped playing altogether. Toxic people love open access to your life, your time, your emotions, your energy. They love knowing they can reach you whenever they want. No matter what you are doing or how you are feeling, they love being able to drop their problems onto your shoulders like you were built to carry weight that was never yours. They love the comfort of knowing that if they break down, lash out, or create a mess, you will show up, no questions asked. I think all of us are there being addicted to chaos. We know we are not. Not because they value you, but because they value the way you make their life easier. They do not see your presence as a gift. They see it as a guarantee, and they get comfortable with that. Too comfortable. You do not realize how much access you have given someone until the day you start pulling it back. The day you say, I am not available, silence falls heavier. The day you say, I do not accept this behavior, suddenly you are difficult, changing, or ungrateful. The day you say, my time is valuable, every person who once benefited from your lack of boundaries begins to feel the shift. Not because you have become selfish, but because they can no longer treat you like an emotional dumping ground, a 24/7 support system, or a safety net they never appreciated. There is something strong about reclaiming your life. It begins quietly with a decision. A decision to stop carrying the weight of other people's irresponsibility. A decision to stop answering calls that drain you. A decision to stop saving people who do not want to grow. A decision to stop sacrificing your mental peace just to keep someone else emotionally comfortable. The moment you make that decision, everything changes. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. You will notice it immediately. The people who truly care will adjust. They will understand. They will respect the space you are creating because they value you. The ones who do not care about you, only about what you provide, will react. Because boundaries feel like rejection to someone who only loved the parts of you that serve them. When you start saying no, you will see things clearly. You will see who reaches out less because they never wanted a relationship. They wanted access. You will see who starts acting distant or annoyed because they no longer benefit from your availability. You will see who tries to guilt trip you with words like, you do not care about me, or you are so busy now, or you are acting different. They do not mean you are acting different. They mean they cannot control you anymore. Psychology shows that people who lack emotional regulation, people who never learned how to handle disappointment, rejection, or discomfort, use tactics to regain control every time someone sets boundaries. Guilt is one. Silent treatment is another. Sudden anger is a big one. These reactions are not random. They are deliberate. They are designed to make you second-guess your boundaries, to make you feel responsible for someone else's emotional instability. Because the moment you feel responsible, you will shrink your boundary just to avoid the tension. It is strategy, and for a long time, you do not even realize you are playing a game you never signed up for. You just know that every time you set a limit, you are met with a reaction that makes you uncomfortable, so you back down. That is how toxic patterns form. That is how people learn. They can push your limits until your limits disappear completely. But the moment you stop participating in the game, the moment you stay firm, even when they react, something powerful happens. Their tactics do not work anymore. Their manipulation loses its strength. Their anger does not scare you. Their silence does not make you chase them. Their guilt does not move you. You stop responding to fear and start responding to truth. And the truth is simple. Are not responsible for managing anyone else's emotions. You are not responsible for smoothing over someone's chaos. You are not responsible for healing wounds you did not create. You are not responsible for keeping a peace that costs you your sanity. You have the right to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual space. A boundary is not a wall. It is a door. And you get to decide who walks through it, how long they stay, and how they treat you while they are inside. Toxic people want the door wide open. They want to walk in and out at any hour. They want to track mud through your life and expect you to clean up after them. They want to rearrange the furniture in your mind and call it love. But when you install a lock, when you put a limit on their access, when you require respect as the price of admission, they act like you have attacked them. But it is not an attack, it is protection. The truth is, boundaries threaten people who depended on your lack of them. They are not afraid of losing you. They are afraid of losing the control they had over you. Your courage becomes their fear because it forces them to face their own behavior. It forces them to confront the fact that they have been taking advantage of you. It forces them to recognize the selfishness they did not want to admit. See, when a person is used to you being available 24/7, your unavailability feels like abandonment. When they are used to you absorbing their problems, your refusal feels like betrayal. When they are used to disrespecting you without consequence, your standards feel like conflict, but their discomfort is not your burden. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Their frustration is not your fault. You set boundaries to protect your peace. They resist boundaries to keep their power. And the moment you stand firm, you teach them that the old version of you, the version who tolerated disrespect, who stayed silent, who accepted scraps, is gone. And once they realize they can no longer drain you, no longer manipulate you, no longer rely on your availability without offering anything in return, the dynamic shifts in your favor. You stop being someone they can use. You become someone they must respect. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about letting the right people in. Boundaries do not destroy relationships. They reveal them. They show you who values you and who values what they get from you. They show you who wants to grow with you and who wants to stay exactly the same. And the truth is, your boundary is the moment you choose yourself. Your boundary is the moment you step out of the cycle of pleasing, fixing, carrying, explaining, and apologizing. Your boundary is the moment you say, I matter too. And that single moment, that single shift, that single sentence becomes powerful enough to break every illusion of control anyone ever had over your life. When you begin to grow, truly grow, it shakes the room in ways you never anticipated. You do not announce it. You do not brag about it. You do not post it for applause. You simply start making different choices, better choices, healthier choices. You start waking up with a sense of purpose. You start wanting more for yourself, more peace, more discipline, more clarity, more meaning. And little by little, your life begins to shift. Not because the world changed, but because you did. But that shift does not happen quietly in the hearts of the people around you, especially the ones who are not growing, especially the ones who are comfortable in their stagnation, especially the ones who depended on you staying exactly where you were so they could feel better about where they are. Your growth becomes a mirror, one they never asked for, one they never wanted to look into because it reflects everything they have been avoiding. When you start improving yourself, Toxic people start to feel exposed. They see you working on your goals and suddenly feel the weight of the goals they abandoned. They see you healing from your past, and suddenly they feel the sting of the emotional wounds they refuse to touch. They see you building confidence, and suddenly they feel smaller, not because you made them small, but because they never grew. They see you changing your habits, and suddenly the excuses they have been living behind for years feel thin, fragile, obvious. And instead of being inspired, instead of rising with you, instead of asking how they can grow too, they try to pull you back. They try to keep you at the level where they felt safe, where they felt superior, where they did not have to confront themselves. I have seen friendships fall apart the moment someone starts bettering themselves. One person starts going to the gym, starts eating healthier, starts caring about their mind and their body, and the friend group starts mocking them. They tease them for ordering a salad, for skipping a night out, for wanting to get up early. They do not make fun because it is funny. They make fun because it is threatening, because your discipline highlights their lack of. I have seen someone start a small business printing shirts, selling cakes, fixing phones, and at first it is harmless. But the moment they start getting traction, the moment the idea shows potential, the jealous cousin starts spreading rumors. Not because the business is wrong, but because the effort reminds them of every dream they never chased. I have seen someone take their mental health seriously, go into therapy, journaling, setting boundaries, refusing to repeat old cycles, and their partner suddenly says, "You have changed." Not because the change is negative, but because the old version of you allowed behavior the new version will not tolerate. When someone says, "You have changed," what they often mean is you are growing, and I am still the same. What they mean is you are evolving, and I am staying comfortable. What they mean is you break his cycles and I am still living in mine. Your growth becomes the very thing they are running from. Not because you are doing anything to them, but because you are doing something for yourself. The truth is, growth is uncomfortable to people who are committed to staying the same. It forces them to confront their own choices, their own laziness, their own fear, their own excuses. And rather than face those truths, they try to drag you back to the familiar version of yourself. The version they could predict, control, and understand because your evolution threatens their stagnation. People love you as long as you stay where they met you. But start climbing, start moving forward, start elevating your mindset, and suddenly you are acting different. Well, you are acting different. That is the entire point. Growth demands difference. Growth demands leaving who you were. Growth requires letting go of identities that no longer serve you. But toxic people do not want you to grow because your growth demands they either grow or get left behind. And most would rather hold you back than rise with you. But notice it in their reactions. They will downplay your progress. You're doing too much. You are changing too fast. You think you better than us now. You used to be fun. You are not the same person anymore. And they right, you are not. You are not supposed to be. Growth is your freedom. Their insecurity is what tries to chain you down. They will say things like, "Why are you doing all this?" Because you are tired of surviving, because you are ready to thrive, because you are done repeating cycles that were never meant for you, because you are learning your worth, because you are finally choosing yourself. What they do not understand is that growth is not just about success. It is about healing. It is about rewriting your story. It is about breaking generational patterns. It is about becoming the person your younger self needed. It is about refusing to let pain dictate your future. Imagine someone drowning, but they have convinced themselves the water is warm. They have been there so long they stop fighting. You swim toward the shore, and instead of cheering for you, they grab your ankle, not out of hate, but out of fear. Because if you escape, they will be left alone with the truth. There was always a way out. They just never took it. That is what your growth feels like to someone stuck in their own stagnation. It feels like abandonment. It feels like betrayal. It feels like judgment, even though you are just trying to breathe. But you cannot shrink yourself to protect someone else from seeing their own fear. You cannot dim your light to make someone else comfortable in their darkness. You cannot stay small for the sake of people who refuse to grow. You owe it to yourself to evolve. You owe it to your future to rise. You owe it to your soul to expand. Your growth will reveal who was truly in your corner and who was only comfortable while you were stuck. And when the dust settles, the people meant for you will celebrate your evolution. The ones who are not will fall away, not because you pushed them out, but because they chose not to move forward. And that is okay, because growth is not supposed to make everyone comfortable. It is supposed to make you free. Fear is the oldest weapon in the book, and toxic people use it like a craftsman uses a tool. Precise, calculated practice. They do not need chains or walls to hold you in place. They just need you scared. Scared of walking away, scared of speaking up, scared of choosing yourself, scared that life beyond them will be emptier than life with them. They know that if fear keeps you still, they never have to grow. They never have to change. They never have to face themselves. And they know something else too. Fear shapes choices. Fear makes you say yes when your heart is screaming no. Fear makes you stay silent when your spirit wants to roar. Fear makes you cling to people who hurt you because they convince you that losing them will hurt even more. Fear blinds you to the truth that you were strong before them, and you will be strong after them. So toxic people nurture fear in you like a seed, watering it with doubts. Who else is going to love you? No one else will tolerate you. You are too sensitive. You are lucky to have me. You will not survive without me. And over time, those words start to sound like your own thoughts. You start to mistake captivity for companionship. You start to confuse anxiety with attachment. You start to believe that leaving is scarier than staying, even when staying is slowly destroying you. That is why confidence is the one thing they cannot afford for you to have. Because confidence changes the story. Confidence removes the fog. Confidence strips fear of its power. Confidence makes you see yourself with new eyes, eyes that are no longer clouded by their manipulation. When you build self-respect, you stop making decisions based on wounds and start making decisions based on worth. You stop choosing out of desperation and start choosing out of strength. You stop acting from fear and start acting from truth. There is something unexplainably powerful about a person who finally realizes they are enough. A person who wakes up one day and says, I deserve better. A person who understands that love does not require abandoning yourself. A person who recognizes that peace is not something you beg for, something you build. Take the woman who stayed in a draining relationship for years. She did not stay because she did not know it was hurting her. She knew. She felt every lonely night, every dismissed feeling, every broken promise, every emotional bruise. She stayed because fear whispered louder than hope. Fear told her she could not make it alone. Fear told her leaving would destroy everything. Fear told her nobody else would want her. But one day she got tired of listening to fear. She worked on herself not for anyone else, but for her own survival. She went to therapy. She built her finances. She reconnected with relationships she had abandoned. She rebuilt her self-worth brick by brick and piece by piece. The fear that once consumed her started to fade. Then came the moment that changed everything. She looked her partner in the eye. Same person, same house, same life, but she was no longer the same woman. And she said, I am not afraid anymore. Those 4 words did not change the past, but they changed the power. When fear left her body, control left his hands. He panicked. He tried everything. Sweet words, big gestures, promises he never intended to keep. When that did not work, he tried guilt. When guilt did not work, he tried intimidation. When that did not work, he threatened to leave. And for the first time, she did not break because fear had left. And without fear, manipulation does not survive. That is the thing toxic people do not want you to know. They do not fear you walking away. They fear you waking up. They fear the moment you realize you do not need them. They fear the moment you recognize your value. They fear the moment you stop believing their lies and start believing in yourself. Because when confidence enters your spirit, it locks the doors that fear once kept open. Confidence changes the dynamic completely. It shifts the energy in the room. It makes you harder to influence, harder to manipulate, harder to control. Toxic people do not know how to operate around someone who knows their worth. Because their tactics only work on people who doubt themselves. They cannot gaslight someone who trusts their own intuition. They cannot intimidate someone who is not afraid of being alone. They cannot guilt-trip someone who understands they do not owe their life to anyone. Confidence is freedom. Confidence is clarity. Confidence is the shield that protects you from the words meant to break you. Confidence is the voice inside you that says, I do not have to accept this. I do not have to fear this. I do not have to shrink for this. And the moment that voice gets louder, fear gets quieter. And the moment fear gets quieter, their influence dissolves. And the moment their influence dissolves, you reclaim a life that was always yours. Confidence does not mean you stop feeling fear altogether. It means you stop letting fear make your choices. It means you walk forward even when you are uncertain. It means you trust yourself even when others doubt you. It means you honor your spirit even when people try to make you feel unworthy. Confidence makes you magnetic to the right people and pushes away the wrong ones. The ones who love you will rise with you. The ones who used you will fall away. And that is the blessing, because your confidence weeds out those who only stayed because you feared letting go. When fear no longer controls your steps, you begin walking in strength. And that strength, steady, unshakable, becomes something toxic people can no longer penetrate. You stop being a target. You stop being a victim. When you stop being a puppet in someone else's hands, you become someone they cannot break anymore, someone they cannot manipulate, someone they cannot control. Because once you see your worth, no one can ever use fear against you again. There comes a moment in a person's life when the pattern finally becomes clear. When you look back at everything you allowed, everything you forgave, everything you excused, and you realize none of it was love. It was a cycle so familiar, it felt normal. A cycle so repetitive, it felt permanent. A cycle designed to keep you emotionally exhausted, spiritually drained, and mentally confused. Toxic people depend on cycles the way storms depend on chaos. They repeat themselves because repetition is the only way they know how to keep you trapped. They hurt you, then apologize. They break you, then comfort you. They disappear, then come back with affection. They ruin your peace, then act like they are the only one who can restore it. It is a predictable dance. Pain followed by relief, relief followed by hope, hope followed by disappointment. And the more times it repeats, the easier it becomes for them to slip back into the same behavior without consequence. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. Because you wanted to believe in them. Because you wanted stability, even if it came wrapped in inconsistency. But something shifts the moment you start developing self-respect. It does not happen overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, like a sunrise creeping over a long, dark night. One day you wake up, and the apology that used to move you falls flat. The affection that once felt comforting now feels calculated. The promises that once gave you hope now sound like recycled lines from a script you have heard 100 times. The cycle does not hold the same power because you are no longer the same person. You stop responding to their bait. Suddenly, the comment meant to provoke you does not get the reaction they expected. The guilt they try to place on your shoulders slides off like water. The silent treatment that once tied your stomach in knots no longer affects your peace. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not distant. You are done. You are not angry. You are awake. And that awakening scares them. You stop rewarding their disrespect. You stop allowing their inconsistency. You stop believing their tears, their promises, their emotional performances. You see their apologies for what they are. Not transformation, but strategy. Not accountability, but manipulation. Not growth, but maintenance of the cycle. You do not fall for the speeches anymore. The "I promise I will change" monologues that once tugged at your heart lose their shine. Because now you are paying attention to patterns, not words. You are paying attention to actions, not emotions. You are paying attention to the truth, not the fantasy you built around them. And the most powerful shift of all, you let go emotionally. Detachment is quiet. It is calm. It is steady. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is not chaotic. It is a soft release, a gentle turning away, a silent reclaiming of your soul. You stop arguing. You stop proving your point. You stop trying to be understood by someone who never cared enough to listen. You walk away without warning because you already gave your warnings 1,000 times and they never mattered. The strength to walk away, that is the earthquake toxic people never prepare for. They plan for your forgiveness. They plan for your tears. They plan for your patience. They plan for your loyalty, but they never plan for your exit. They never imagined a world where you did not come back. They never imagined you choosing yourself. They never imagined you breaking a cycle. They assumed you were bound to for life. And when you walk away, really walk away, their control collapses. Everything they built on your insecurity, on your fear, on your trauma begins to fall apart. Because when you love yourself, you do not return to places that broke you. You do not return to conversations that drain you. You do not return to relationships that diminish you. You do not return to versions of yourself that were built on survival instead of self-worth. Loving yourself becomes the greatest act of rebellion. You break generational habits. The ones that taught you love meant suffering, silence, sacrifice. You break trauma patterns, the ones that kept you tied to people who mirrored the wounds you were trying to escape. You break the cycle not just for yourself, but for every version of you that did not know better, and every version of you that will come after. Your self-respect destroys the cycle they were counting on, and that is the one thing toxic people fear more than anything. Not your anger, not your silence, not your distance. What they fear most is your healing. Because healed people do not stay where they are mistreated. Healed people do not repeat old stories. Healed people do not settle for emotional scraps. Healed people see clearly. Healed people walk away with dignity. And once you break the cycle, the story they wrote for you ends, and the story you write for yourself begins. So listen closely. Your self-respect is not a threat to good people. It is not a burden. It is not arrogance. It is your protection. It is your filter, mon ami. It is how you separate who deserves access to you and who only wants to use you. Toxic people fear your self-respect because it reminds them that your life is no longer theirs to control. You choose who stays. You choose who goes. You choose yourself. And once you choose yourself, nobody can take that power away.